"And what about my friends?" I asked, grating on my mom's nerves. "That's something your father can deal with," she said, and loudly dragged the trolley outside, chucking a small backpack with, most likely, clean diapers for Bubblegum down on the ground next to it. Then she put a still sleeping Bubblegum into my arms, slightly more carefully. The last thing she said was, "You're dealing with this on your own," before slamming the apartment door shut. Under any other circumstances, our mom likely wouldn't have kicked us out of our own home, but sometimes, especially when she was tired, things like this just happened. I'd seen it happen exactly like this in a movie I watched not too long ago. It was about a noble family from some long ago century, a countess with 2 children and severe, near-constant migraines. And whenever she had those migraines, she simply ordered a house chef to arrange dinner, told her maid to dress up the children for dinner, sent a gardener to pick up the toys the children had left laying around in the garden, and finally asked her butler to wake her sleeping husband just in time for the family meal. Imagine how much more often my mom had to get these migraines, not having a maid, a cook, a gardener, or a butler at her every hand, but instead having to fulfill all these roles simultaneously. I'd have a freak out from time to time as well. Why, oh why, didn't have my mom an entire battalion of staff like the countess from the movie had? She definitely acted the part of a posh aristocrat occasionally. For example, when I had a pair of socks lying on the floor of my room, especially if it was a used pair of socks. But now enough of movies and back to the events of the stressful evening, shortly past 9 p.m. Our non-existent gardener guided my dad into the courtyard, and our equally non-existent butler opened him the back door of the apartment complex. Now, after our cook, also known as my mom, had packed us our lunch bag and the mother, also my mom, had advised the maid, you guessed it, my mom, to throw us out of the apartment, I had to admit that I felt the slightest bit out of my depth. Standing right next to the apartment door and struggling even just to hold a sleeping Bubblegum, I was quite at loss about what to do. All I could do was hope that my dad had entered call distance, which wasn't as likely as you might think it was, because he generally avoided entering our flat, or even just the apartment complex we lived in. "Dad?" I shouted loud into the hallway, simply hoping that he would be able to hear me. On top of literally everything, the hallway lightning went out. I spent several terrifying seconds standing alone in the dark, with only Bubblegum on my arm to keep me company. Well, technically both arms, because he'd long since grown out of being a cute little baby, and instead muted it into a full-out toddler, he effectively preventing me from using a theoretical free arm to turn back on the lights. "Yes?" Someone I could only hope was my dad hesitantly called from the ground floor. I heard steps walking up the first couple stairs, and I hoped from the bottom of my heart that the other person in the hallway was my dad, not just another burglar. Then, Mr. answering my call and going up the stairs seemed to have found a light switch because suddenly the lights turned back on. Mr. clicking a light switch took another few hesitant steps before halting, still out of sight. Immediately after, the apartment door was ripped open again and my mom reappeared in the doorway, flinging the red lunch bag onto the floor next to it. The lunch bag, landed with a resounding crack, and I could only hope that a bottle of multivitamin Joyce had survived the fall. "Oh, look at the two of you, has your fine father stood you up?" she snapped at us. "I'm on my way," my dad replied from far down the staircase, still barely audible and hesitant. Apparently the mysterious person who walked up the stairs and switched on the lights had really just been him. My mom made the drawn-out pfft sounds before disappearing back into the apartment. If I was to be honest, divorced parents acted like kindergarten children sometimes. I had to shake my head at them. At least kindergarten children had their kindergarten teachers to tell them off, whereas my parents unfortunately didn't have an adult garden teacher. Or would my dad consider God to be the teacher looking over the adults? After all, there was a biblical story of the first 2 adults living in the Garden of Eden. I should really ask him about his opinion on that matter. Said Dad finally appeared on our floor, visibly glad to see his 2 children, even though I kept cautiously eyeing the door for any signs of my mom making another reappearance. He took Bubblegum off me with one arm, grabbed our trolley with the other. I shouldered a small backpack and we hobbled down the staircase. Hobbled because my dad struggled navigating both Bubblegums and the trolley, even though he was a lot stronger than me. Our descent was a slow one, and the lights went out again just as we were halfway down. "Ooh, Dad!" I suddenly remembered. "There's a red bag full of food at the door that we forgot to take with us." I was still speaking when I realized that there was little point talking about a red bag, when the entire hallway was pitch black. "You have food?" my dad said. "That's good. I was in such a hurry to leave after the meeting this afternoon that I only managed to grab a bottle of water, a dry piece of bread, and 2 carrots, all of which I've already eaten." He turned his gaze upwards and found a small orange light that indicated the light switch. He noticed. "I really want to avoid walking up the stairs while holding Bubblegum. I could trip in the dark and get him horribly injured." "I can take Bubblegum," I offered quickly. I know well enough that one blundering dad had the potential to cause more chaos and havoc than a blue whale in a porcelain store. I just sit down here while you go up and turn out the lights. But don't you think, my dad started to ponder, that it would be simpler if you ran up the stairs and turned on the lights yourself and then took the bag along with you? Not necessarily, I amended very timidly. I'm so scared of wandering alone through the dark that I would most likely slip as well and take you down with me. And then all three of us would end up in the ICU today, provided someone finds us in time. Or else we'll just lay around on the floor until tomorrow morning, each sporting a broken collarbone, a broken nose bridge, and a broken femur, in any order. That's a sound argument, my dad said, and tried to balance the trolley on a staircase right below him. It didn't work as well as it might have if he hadn't tried it in complete darkness. The stupid trolley crashed down the stairs and made so much noise that it felt like my mom hadn't filled it with colorful children's clothes, but with dozens of tin pots and dozens of appropriate clattering tin spoons.